they will lose their job because
Mhm.
there's this new vision for education, and it's the standardization and the evaluation of teachers and these preconceived that's what C-scope was. It was a three-part system. You had your scope and sequence, you had your lesson given to the teacher, and you had the assessment. Whoever controls the assessment controls that lesson. And it's complete control of the teachers as well. Chris, how do we become the voice of those teachers or give power back to the teacher in the classroom? One of the really scary things that I see, and with this next generation of assessments and accountability, all this digital online learning and adaptive assessments and formative assessments where they're daily collecting data on the kid and then the software creates the program for the lesson, you're taking teachers completely out of the picture. Isn't that a really dangerous path that we're going down, Chris?
Yeah, the online issue and putting kids in front of computers and using that as their instruction is very dangerous because the computer only reacts to the student, okay? Where when you're working with a teacher, the teacher is a good teacher is proactively doing things in the instructional methodology and the instructional sequence to help that student move forward. The computer-based assessment and the computer-based learning can only be reactive based on what the student does. So I think we're making a very big mistake in terms of relying on computer-based education as an instructional tool. That doesn't mean it can't be, used for practice and some of these other more routine things. But when it becomes the instructor, I think we're really lowering the quality of education.
Mm.
And this is the number one recommendation that the Texas Commission on Next Generation of Assessments and Accountability gave to the Lieutenant Governor and the Texas Legislature. And he wouldn't talk about it tonight because I don't want to talk about the assessments and the accountability. The number one recommendation is to implement an individualized, integrated system of multiple assessments using computerized adaptive testing and instruction.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, and they're calling it, we've got all these school districts that are becoming districts of innovation. They call it DOI. And one of the things that is scary to me, while I like innovation, innovation is experimentation. So we are experimenting using computer adaptive assessments. And when they say personalized learning, that's not personalized learning from a teacher who is differentiating among kids in her class based on knowing those kids. This is a personalized data backpack, basically, where the computer becomes the teacher. Chris, is this going on that you know of in other states, this next generation of assessments and accountability?
Yeah, that's what you're describing is happening in other states. It happened especially all of the states that originally went with the PARC testing, which was tied to the Common Core. There were about 19 states that started it. It's down to 7 now. Unfortunately, New Jersey's still one of them. We'll probably be the last one to get rid of it. That all went to mandatory. First of all, it all went to mandatory online testing. And then from the online testing, you had the introduction of a slew of products that introduced more testing into the classroom. And then based on the results of those tests, the kids were given, learning plans that then they would then go on the computer and work through these computerized learning plans. So what you're doing, like you said, is you're removing the teacher from the instructional process. And over the long term, you're actually de-skilling teachers. They're not teachers anymore. They become technicians that just implement management and implement programs. So the long-term effect on teachers is to de-skill the teacher, and it's a lowering of the instructional quality for students. There is no evidence. There is no evidence that has been replicated on a large scale to show that these programs are superior to teachers. The evidence just doesn't exist. It's the same thing with the one-to-one. You hear a lot about one-to-one initiatives where every student has a computer in the entire school. Every student in the entire school has a computer. One-to-one, one-to-one. There's no evidence to support that increases academic achievement more than a good teacher. So I think we're in a time period right now where the hype of these things, they're using the buzzword innovation, but the practices that are being put in place don't lead to innovation. So I think it's more hype than substance, and parents need to continue to call out their local school boards, their local schools, and the state school board. I know one of the things that has really happened here in New Jersey, one of the good things that has resulted from Common Core and PARCC testing and this push for standardization has been an absolute pushback by parents. You go to our school board meeting, the state school board meetings now, and they are packed with parents. You go to the state education legislative committee meetings, and they are packed with parents. So with all the bad things that has happened, I think the good thing that has happened is it has generated parent activism, and that's really, at the end of the day, the only thing that's going to change is parental pressure on lawmakers, because they'll sit and listen to presentations from me and other people with all of these data, but at the end of the day, they only care about the person that calls them on the phone who votes for them. So I think parental pressure, community pressure about these things is one way that will get changes over time.
I think you're exactly right. That's what it's got to be. One last question for you. This appointment of Betsy DeVos, one of the things that we have found in our research, there's moms all over the country who are looking in, and I'm telling you, these moms are better researchers than anybody. Probably not on your level, Chris, but they know. And one of the things that Sherry from Colorado found is that one of the red flags about Betsy DeVos is the money that she and her husband and their foundation have put into these big technology companies to data mine children. There's one report where she supports 50,000 data points per hour, mining this data on students. Parents have no idea that this is even happening, and she's part of a philanthropic roundtable, the venture capital roundtable, where they are promoting these computer-based data mining for education. This is a real issue when you have this push for school choice, and from the school choice people like DeVos, Jeb Bush, where they're profiting off of this $800 or $900 billion computer-based learning programs. And then you have, like in Texas, the TASA, TASB, and the Education Service Centers, who are also pushing the online digital learning because they've been funded by grants from the Gates Foundation. All of it, both sides, whether it's the TASA, TASB, and the Education Service Center guys, or it's the school choice side, all of them are pushing competency-based digital learning and these computer-based programs. Is that of concern to you as well? Because when we fight school choice, we want our public schools, but then we go into our public schools and they're pushing all of the same thing. How do we fight this?
It's problematic, and you brought up a couple issues here. The data mining issue has accelerated greatly since under Common Core. That was part of the race to the top application, some of these other things, and that's going to continue to accelerate. That's part of the whole. There's a whole marketing movement, to get more products and more technology marketed to parents and marketed to schools. And you can see the increase over the past 6 years in terms of the amount of money spent on technological products, or technology interventions. I mean, it's absolutely skyrocketed. So there's a lot of money to be made. There's a lot of conflicts of interest with the current Department of Education. And it seems as though with this nominee, if this nominee goes through, there'll be what I believe are conflicts of interest in terms of this person's involvement in the technology industry and in the school choice industry and some of the other things. So I think what we're seeing here is really, education is a $787 billion industry. And I think what we're seeing partly is that people want to get cut in on that to the detriment of kids. Because like I said, there's no evidence that any of this it does well for kids. And when you look at some of the top, now I mean top of the line private schools in the country, these are some schools that don't use technology or limit it. They limit it greatly to less than 60 minutes of screen time a day. Okay, so that also tells me something as well. But you don't have to be an expert to know that a good teacher is better than putting the kid in front of a computer. So yeah, I'm concerned about the appointment on many different levels. I don't understand where that appointment's really coming from, other than from a financial point of view.
Right. We've got a question on here. Let me unmute this call. Are you there? Did you have a question?